My name is Arthur Caldwell. I'm 52 years old, and for over a decade I was the Director of Vendor Relations at Global Connect Logistics, one of the largest international logistics companies in the United States. Our headquarters were in Chicago, and my office on the 47th floor had a privileged view of Lake Michigan. But the real view that mattered was the one I had of the global market. For 12 years, I was literally the face of Global Connect to our main international partners. I learned Mandarin to negotiate with the Chinese, German to deal with the Europeans, and Spanish for contracts in Latin America. My schedule was always packed with trips to Hamburg, Shanghai, Mexico City. Each contract renewal was worth millions of dollars, and every negotiation was like a delicate dance where one false step could cost the company tens of millions. All my renewals were done with absolute transparency, everything documented, with rigorously signed compliance clauses. In an industry where bribes and favors were commonplace, I was known for one thing: absolute integrity. I never accepted a gift worth more than $20, never accepted a dinner that wasn't strictly professional, never allowed personal gain to interfere with the company's interests. My record was impeccable: results and respect. Nothing more, nothing less. I've always been more of a behind-the-scenes guy, building bridges between cultures and companies. While other executives appeared in specialized magazines, I was on the factory floor in Shenzhen at 5 in the morning, or on a video conference at 2 in the morning with German suppliers. My discretion and absolute loyalty to the company were perhaps mistaken for a lack of internal political ambition. I didn't compete for positions. I didn't play corporate games. I simply did my job better than anyone else. And if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You won't want to miss what happened next. It was a typical Thursday in October in Chicago when everything changed. Autumn painted the trees on Michigan Avenue, and I was reviewing quarterly contracts when my phone rang. It was Clark Sterling, our 55-year-old CEO. A man who breathed Excel spreadsheets and talked about restructuring and talent optimization, as if they were sacred mantras. "Arthur," he said with that controlled voice that always put me on alert, "how about we grab lunch today? I know a place you'll like." The place was Gibson's Bar and Steakhouse, my favorite restaurant on Rush Street. Clark knew that. The atmosphere started friendly. We talked about the market, about the challenges of the global supply chain, about how the pandemic had affected our operations. He ordered a Manhattan. I stuck to my usual iced tea. We talked about everything but specific work, which was already strange. It was in the middle of the main course, as I was cutting my ribeye, that Clark paused, looked directly into my eyes with a smile that didn't reach them, and dropped the bombshell. "Arthur, we've decided to bring in some new energy. The owner's stepson, Liam, just finished his MBA at Northwestern and will be taking over your role." My fork stopped mid-air. The restaurant's noise seemed to fade. I felt as if someone had punched me in the stomach, but my voice came out calm, professional, controlled. "I see. That's your call, Clark. I'll prepare a full transition report and introduce him to our key partners." Inside, a part of me was in shock. 12 years. 12 years building relationships, learning languages, traveling the world, closing contracts that kept the company competitive in the global market. But another part of me, the part that had survived decades of complex international negotiations, simply thought, they have no idea what they just did. Clark continued talking about smooth transitions and how my experience would be invaluable in training Liam. But I was barely listening. My mind was already processing the true dimension of that decision. Liam Sterling was 28, the owner's stepson, had just graduated from Kellogg School of Management, and his practical real-world experience amounted to exactly 0. His only qualification was having the right last name and an MBA diploma that still smelled of fresh ink. I finished my lunch, split the bill as I always did, shook Clark's hand and said, "I'll have everything ready for the transition by next Friday." And that's exactly what I did. In the following days, I worked as I had never worked before, not out of blind loyalty to the company that had just discarded me, But because my professional reputation depended on how I handled that transition, I organized a folder that was practically an encyclopedia of international negotiations. All active contracts, with detailed notes on specific clauses. All key contacts, not just names and phone numbers, but personal notes on their personalities, cultural preferences, even the birthdays of some negotiators' children. I created a complete history of each renewal over the last 5 years, including points of tension, concessions made, critical moments where everything almost fell apart. There was an entire section dedicated to what I called commercial pitfalls, those subtle details that could destroy a negotiation if not handled delicately. For example, never mentioning Taiwan as a separate country in front of the Chinese, always confirming whether Germans preferred communication by email or phone, never scheduling meetings with Mexicans in the first week of December because of the Guadalupan celebrations. But what Clark and Liam didn't know, and I had no intention of fully revealing, was that my true secret weapon wasn't in any folder. It was something that couldn't be documented or transferred, the personal trust I had built over more than a decade. Suppliers didn't renew contracts with Global Connect. They renewed with me. They trusted my word, my integrity, the way I conducted the processes. There were signs that this change had been planned for months. Clark had been talking about fresh perspectives and lean operations in board meetings. Liam had started showing up at the office weeks earlier, always with that typical arrogance of someone who never had to prove anything in real life. He observed my work with an air of superiority, as if studying a dinosaur on the verge of extinction. Once, I heard him commenting to another executive, "These old-school guys don't understand how business works nowadays." My intuition, forged in years of negotiating with experienced executives around the world, told me there was more behind that decision than just new energy. The timing was suspicious. Global Connect was having one of its best financial years, our international contracts were solid, and I had just closed a 5-year deal with our largest Asian supplier that would save the company about $15 million annually. During my last week, I kept a detailed digital diary of all interactions. Not out of paranoia, but because decades of experience taught me that details matter. I recorded the supplier's reactions when I announced my departure. The genuine surprise of Heinrich Müller, our main contact in Germany. But Arthur, who will handle the winter logistics contracts? The concern of Chen Wei from our biggest Chinese partner. Arthur, you have been our bridge to America for so many years. This is unexpected. I made sure to say goodbye personally to every important contact. Not with fanfare or drama, but with a simple, "It's been an honor working with you all these years. I'll be in touch." That last phrase, "I'll be in touch," was loaded with meaning that only they would understand. In the world of international negotiations, when someone of my reputation says they'll keep in touch, it means the doors remain open, regardless of where that person is working. What Clark Sterling and young Liam didn't realize was that they were making a fundamental error in business logic. They thought that, with proper documentation and an MBA diploma, Liam could simply take over my responsibilities. It was like believing someone could become a heart surgeon by reading medical manuals. International negotiations are not about standardized protocols and procedures. They are about personal trust, cultural understanding, and relationships built over years of face-to-face interactions. On my last Friday, I scheduled a transition meeting with Liam. He arrived 20 minutes late, wearing an overly expensive suit and an even more expensive attitude. I spent 3 hours explaining the most critical details, but I realized he was more interested in how he was going to rearrange my old office than in understanding the nuances of the contracts he would inherit. "Don't worry, Arthur," he said with that irritating confidence of privileged youth. "I've got this covered. Time to bring these relationships into the 21st century." I smiled and replied, "I'm sure you do, Liam. Best of luck." I cleared my desk, picked up my personalized coffee mug, a gift from a Japanese supplier 5 years prior, and walked out of Global Connect for the last time. I didn't look back. What happened in the next 2 months was exactly what anyone with real experience in international negotiations would have predicted. But Clark, Sterling, and Liam were too blind by their own arrogance to see the disaster approaching like a Category 5 hurricane. The first crack appeared 3 weeks after my departure. Heinrich Müller, from Bavarian Logistics, called Clark directly, asking about my whereabouts. "We have some serious concerns about the winter shipping schedules," Heinrich said, with that German formality that masks growing impatience. "Where is Arthur? We need to discuss the Alpine route modifications immediately. This is time-sensitive." Clark, trying to maintain executive composure, explained that Liam was now in charge of international negotiations and that he had been thoroughly briefed on all contracts. Heinrich's response was glacial. "I see. Please have this Liam contact me immediately. We have very specific protocols to follow, and delays will cost us millions." Liam, puffed up with academic confidence and MBA theories, called Heinrich the next day. The conversation lasted exactly 12 minutes. Heinrich later told me the details in a call I received weeks later. Liam tried to renegotiate clauses that had been carefully built over years of delicate negotiations, suggesting modern efficiencies that demonstrated a complete lack of understanding of European winter logistics. "Arthur," Heinrich told me with that German patience tested to its limit, "this boy tried to tell me how to manage shipping through the Alps in December. Me, who has been doing this since before he was born. He suggested we could streamline costs by reducing safety protocols during snowstorms. Mein Gott, Arthur, where did you find this child?" The situation with Chen Wei, our Chinese partner and representative of contracts totaling $40 million annually, was even more catastrophic. Liam, apparently unable to understand that international business requires cultural sensitivity, tried to push for lower prices in the very first video conference. He used strategies that might work in a domestic negotiation with Chicago startups, but which were deeply offensive in the Chinese cultural context. Chen Wei, who had respected and treated me as a business partner for over 8 years, remained silent for most of the virtual meeting. When Liam pushed for immediate cost reductions and simplified contract terms, she responded with that icy politeness that any experienced person in Asian business would recognize as a red flag. "We will carefully consider your proposals and respond accordingly through proper channels." I knew exactly what respond accordingly meant in Chinese diplomacy. "No, thank you, and good luck finding other partners," said politely but definitively. Carlos Mendoza, from our Mexican partner responsible for all Central American logistics, had an equally disastrous experience. Liam, apparently unable to understand that international business requires cultural sensitivity, treated Carlos as if he were a local Chicago supplier. He interrupted explanations about complex customs regulations, suggested quick fixes for processes that had taken years to establish, and made the fatal mistake of questioning methods that had worked perfectly for a decade. "Arthur, hermano," Carlos called me frustrated 3 weeks later. "What the hell happened at Global Connect? This kid they sent doesn't know shit about cross-border regulations. He tried to tell me we could cut inspection times by skipping safety protocols." "Safety protocols, Arthur? Does he want to get us all arrested?" While Global Connect was collapsing internationally, I was far from sitting idle, lamenting my situation. I used the first few days of freedom for something I hadn't done in years, thinking strategically about my own future, without the corporate limitations that bound me. With the substantial savings I had accumulated over 12 years of generous salaries, annual bonuses, and a consciously modest lifestyle, I began to structure my own operation. I registered Caldwell Global Solutions as an LLC in the state of Illinois, rented an elegant but functional office in Oak Brook, far enough from Chicago to avoid casual encounters with former colleagues, but close enough to airports to facilitate international travel. I created a professional website, simple but sophisticated, highlighting my experience without directly mentioning Global Connect. I didn't engage in aggressive marketing or active prospecting. I simply let my extensive network of international contacts know, discreetly, that I was available for independent consulting. The calls started in the 4th week. First it was Chen Wei, Arthur, we are experiencing significant difficulties with Global Connect's new representative. His approach is incompatible with our business culture. Perhaps you could advise us on alternative logistics partners in the American market. Then Heinrich, mein lieber Freund, we desperately need someone who understands both American business practices and European logistics standards. This new person at Global Connect is creating dangerous situations. Would you be available for consulting work? Carlos was characteristically direct. Arthur, hermano, we need your help. This situation with Global Connect is becoming impossible. Can you help us find better partners who actually understand international business? Each conversation followed the same revealing pattern. They had tried to work with Liam out of respect for the years of solid relationship we had built, but his incompetence was so blatant and dangerous that they preferred to seek entirely new alternatives rather than risk their own multi-million-dollar businesses. The final straw came at the end of the second month. 4 of Global Connect's main suppliers simultaneously and coordinately sent formal registered letters to the company's headquarters. The content was practically identical and absolutely devastating. They would not renew contracts totaling over $100 million annually without my direct participation in the negotiations. Heinrich was particularly direct in his letter. We have maintained successful partnerships with Global Connect for over a decade, exclusively due to our professional relationship with Arthur Caldwell. Our trust and contractual confidence reside with him personally, not with your organization as an entity. If Mr. Caldwell is not directly involved in our contract renewal process, we will immediately seek alternative partnerships in the American market. Chen Wei, always more diplomatic but equally firm, was crystal clear. Mr. Caldwell has served as our essential bridge to American business culture and logistics standards. Without his direct guidance and participation, we believe that future partnership arrangements may not effectively serve our mutual interests and operational requirements. Absolute panic spread through Global Connect like a virus. Clark Sterling called me personally on a Tuesday at 7:30 a.m., his voice completely choked with corporate desperation. Arthur, we need to talk immediately. These suppliers are threatening to pull out of contracts worth over $100 million. This is a catastrophe. My reply was deliberately calm and measured. I heard about the situation, Clark. It's quite unfortunate, but not entirely surprising. Arthur, he continued, practically begging, we need you back immediately. A senior consultant, your own terms, whatever salary you want, equity options, everything. Liam can work directly under you. Learn properly this time. I let a strategic silence hang for several seconds before replying. Clark, I genuinely appreciate the offer, but I don't work for Global Connect anymore. My independent consulting practice is actually doing quite well. I wish you and Liam all the best of luck with your situation. The irony of the situation was absolutely delicious. In just 2 months, they had managed to destroy international relationships that I had meticulously built over an entire decade. But what Clark Sterling still hadn't realized was that the true extent of the disaster was only just beginning to reveal itself. 3 days after my polite refusal to return to Global Connect, I received a call that would completely change the game. It was Marcus Thompson, CEO of Continental Freight Solutions, one of Global Connect's main competitors. Arthur, he said with that confident voice of someone about to make an offer you can't refuse, word is getting around that you're available for consulting. We've been watching Global Connect's situation with great interest. Marcus got straight to the point. Our Asian operations have been struggling to penetrate the markets where Global Connect has been dominant. Your former suppliers are apparently looking for new American partners. Would you be interested in helping us establish those relationships? It was exactly the opportunity I'd been waiting for, but I didn't show any excessive enthusiasm. I'd be open to discussing the possibilities, Marcus. Let's schedule a meeting. In the following days, Continental Freight wasn't the only company to reach out to me. Midwest Logistics Group called, offering a consulting contract to establish European partnerships. American Global Transport wanted my help to expand into Latin American markets. It was as if the entire international logistics ecosystem had realized that Global Connect's incompetence had created a unique market opportunity. While I structured consulting contracts that would earn me more money in 1 year than I made at Global Connect, the situation there continued to deteriorate spectacularly. Liam, apparently unable to accept that he was completely out of his element, began to make even more desperate moves. He tried to bypass traditional suppliers, seeking cheaper partners in Southeast Asia and Eastern Europe. What he didn't understand was that low price without proven reliability is a disaster waiting to happen in the world of international logistics. In a matter of weeks, Global Connect began facing massive delays, damaged products, and customs regulation violations that resulted in federal fines. The specialized press began reporting Global Connect's difficulties. Trade Logistics Weekly published an article with the headline, "Global Connect Faces Supply Chain Crisis After Executive Shakeup." The Wall Street Journal mentioned the company in a column about corporate nepotism and its consequences. Clark Sterling had to publicly admit in an embarrassing interview that the transition didn't exactly go as planned. Liam's humiliation was even more brutal. He who had boasted about bringing modern energy to old-fashioned negotiations was now known in the industry as the MBA, who almost destroyed a multinational company in less than 3 months. Networking events in Chicago became awkward for him. Executive recruiters stopped returning his calls. Meanwhile, my consulting firm flourished beyond any expectation I could have had. Chen Wei was the first to sign an official contract with me, hiring my services to establish partnerships with 3 of Global Connect's competitors. The contract was worth $200,000 annually for just one client. Heinrich followed soon after. "Arthur," he told me during a video conference, "we have decided to work exclusively with American companies that you personally recommend and oversee. Your reputation is our guarantee of quality and reliability." Carlos was even more generous. "Hermano, you helped us build our American operations from nothing. Now we want to expand throughout North America, but only with partners you approve. Name your consulting fee." In 6 months, my small consulting firm in Oak Brook was managing international contracts totaling over $80 million annually. 3 of Global Connect's main competitors had become my clients, taking advantage of the relationships that Global Connect itself had so casually discarded. The final blow came almost a year after my dismissal. Clark Sterling announced his early retirement, citing strategic changes in the company's direction. Corporate code for, "I was forced out by the board of directors due to the catastrophe I created." Liam was discreetly transferred to a low-level administrative position on the West Coast, far from the Chicago spotlight, before eventually leaving the company completely. Global Connect never fully recovered. They managed to establish new international relationships, but at much higher costs and with much less favorable conditions than the contracts I had negotiated over the years. Their profit margin on international operations fell almost 40%, and their market reputation was never the same. As for me, I learned a valuable lesson that I now pass on to young executives seeking my advice. True professional capital isn't in the position you hold or the company you work for. It's in the reputation you build, the genuine relationships you develop, and the trust you earn through years of ethical and competent work. Corporate loyalty can be betrayed overnight by political decisions and nepotism, but the genuine trust you build with professional partners is practically unbreakable. Today, when I look out my office window in Oak Brook, I don't just see the landscaping of a suburban business park. I see proof that genuine experience and professional integrity always find their value in the market, regardless of how many arrogant MBAs try to replace them. Clark Sterling and Liam learned, in the most costly way possible, that new energy doesn't replace real competence. And I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't a deliberate act of retaliation, but simply allowing incompetence to run its natural course while you build something better from the pieces they left behind. If this story inspired you, like it, comment below sharing your own experiences with workplace injustices, subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and share it with those friends who need to remember that real competence always wins in the end. Until next time.